In this video, I'm going to teach you about the 4 different types of clouds that you see in the sky. And you'll also learn about what kind of weather each one of those clouds brings. So as you listen to the video, go ahead and fill in this page of notes that goes along with it. You can pause the video once I show you the answer and go ahead and copy it down onto your paper as we go through it. So the first thing we need to know is what a cloud is. So in the top of your page of notes, that first blank is the word cloud. A cloud is a collection of tiny condensed water droplets and dust that clump together. So water that's up there in the sky is in the form of water vapor, the type of gas that is water. And then there's also little pieces of dust that are up there in the air from what the wind has picked up and moved around. And so those little pieces of water vapor gas start collecting together and condensing into liquid water droplets around the piece of dust. And then after they do that, they eventually form a single little cloud droplet, which is just this teeny tiny piece of water that is got a piece of dust in the middle of it. As they collect together, they eventually form a cloud. But those little tiny water droplets are so small that they don't fall down to the ground. They're not heavy enough to fall around to the ground, so they just float. So those little tiny pieces of the cloud are these tiny little water droplets surrounded by little pieces of ice. They're so light and tiny, they just float around in the air. However, when enough of them start to clump together, they do actually get heavy enough to start to fall to the ground. So the drops of water will actually fall once you get enough of them. When they fall, we call them precipitation. Precipitation is just our weather word for the water that falls to the ground. So that is coming from the cloud to the ground. So the little tiny water droplets collect together until you get enough of them, and then they're heavy enough and they don't float anymore, they start falling. So our 4 forms of precipitation are rain, snow when the temperature is below freezing, sleet, which is kind of a mix of rain and snow, and then hail, which is like chunks of ice that fall from the sky. So let's take a look at our different types of clouds. The first type is called a cumulus cloud. Cumulus is spelled C-U-M-U-L-U-S. And a cumulus cloud looks like this beautiful white puffy pile that is up in the sky. The word cumulus here actually has this root cumulo, which means a pile of something, like to accumulate. So they kind of pile up into this big fluffy cloud up in the sky. And as you can probably guess, when you see this type of cloud in the sky, it usually means we have good weather. Our science word for good weather is fair weather. So fair means good weather. So it's sunny, it's a beautiful day, great time to spend outside. Those are cumulus clouds, probably everybody's favorite cloud to see. They are big white puffy piles. Our second cloud is called a stratus cloud. Stratus clouds are these thick gray blanket clouds that completely cover the sky. In fact, sometimes when you're looking up at the sky and it's a stratus cloud, it's hard to see where the cloud begins and ends because it's kind of low lying and it just is this big thick blanket that covers everything, and it's kind of hard to even tell that there's a cloud there. It just looks like the whole sky is gray. Stratus clouds, as you can probably guess when you've seen these, you know that this means that there's rain, but usually it's not a heavy rain. This is a light drizzle. I think of that word drizzle when I talk about putting chocolate sauce on my ice cream. So I'm adding chocolate syrup to my ice cream. I don't dump it on really heavy. It's just tiny little amounts that are sort of spread out. That's the idea of this type of precipitation. We get rain, but it's a light drizzle. It's the kind where you can stand outside and yes, you might get a tiny little bit wet, but the rain is probably not going to bother you. So the stratus cloud brings this light drizzle of rain, but it does tend to last a long time. So this is the kind of off and on thing. It can be there for a couple days. You might have indoor recess or might not because it kind of doesn't look that bad outside, but it's just a little wet and damp. That's a stratus cloud. The third type of cloud that we're going to look at is called a cirrus cloud. Cirrus cloud, C-I-R-R-U-S. A cirrus cloud is very light and feathery. So it almost looks like little pieces of a feather. and they are found very high up in the sky. So sometimes you don't even notice that they're there because they're higher up in the sky, but they are these thin, feathery ones. And the reason they're so feathery is because they happen when we have strong winds. Whether the wind is down and towards the ground where you can feel it, or whether it's way high up in the sky in the Earth's atmosphere where you're not feeling that wind, that wind blowing through is moving the clouds and kind of stretching the pieces out. So they look very feathery. So when you have wind blowing like that, that wind is bringing some kind of change in weather. So whenever you see cirrus clouds, it means there's going to be wind, and that wind is going to change the weather. So if it's currently a cold day, the wind coming in is going to be pushing in warm air, and tomorrow is going to be a warmer day. But if it's currently a warm day right now and you see cirrus clouds, you know that the wind is blowing in a different kind of weather, so the temperature is going to be colder tomorrow. So whatever the weather is right now, that sign of seeing cirrus clouds means that it's going to change next time. So it's not actually usually raining when you see cirrus clouds, but it often means that there is a change and it may be raining later. The last type of cloud is kind of a scary one. This is called cumulonimbus clouds. So it starts as like cumulo, kind of like like the cumulus clouds that we saw earlier that were piles that were fluffy, but then we add this nimbus part to the end of that word. Nimbus means storm cloud. So cumulonimbus clouds are these dark gray clouds, and they're also really, really big. So the pictures I'm showing you are ones that are like showing it across the whole sky. They're really, really tall. And when we talk about a cumulonimbus cloud, we call it an anvil shape. An anvil has a flat top to it. It has a flat bottom to it, but then it kind of curves in here towards the middle. That is known as an anvil shape. And the reason it has that anvil shape is because it's so tall. It stretches up through the whole 10 miles of the lower part of the Earth's atmosphere, and then it kind of bottoms out because it sort of runs out of energy. A lot of times when you're looking up in the sky, you are at the bottom of this big gigantic cloud, and so they will kind of look like a stratus cloud. It's kind of hard to tell the difference between a cumulonimbus cloud and a stratus cloud because they're both big and gray and they cover the sky. But as a storm clears, you'll know it was a cumulonimbus cloud because then you kind of see this anvil shape as the cloud starts to move away from you. That's sort of your hint that you had a cumulonimbus cloud. The other way you'll know it's cumulonimbus is that the precipitation will be really hard and heavy. So whether it's snow or whether it's rain, depending on the temperature, it's going to be a really hard, sudden downpour. So this is the type of precipitation where you go outside and you get sopping wet. So there's a whole lot of precipitation, but the trade-off is that it doesn't last as long. So stratus clouds are like this really light drizzle of precipitation, but then it doesn't last that long. Or I'm sorry, with a stratus cloud, it lasts for several days on and off. But with a cumulonimbus cloud, it's going to be this really hard, heavy, dangerous precipitation. You get storms, you get thunder, you get lightning, but then it ends.